Yo, what's up? My name's Patrouski, and I've been playing PokeMMO for over 13 years and have almost 12,000 hours in the game, and this is everything that you need to know about PokeMMO Shiny Wars. One of the most intense gaming competitions to ever exist. The first ever Shiny War within PokeMMO was originally a team communal event started by Team Mr. about 5 years ago in July 2021. It was meant to pit half the team against the other half to inspire some in-team rivalries and encourage more intense shiny hunting, and it seemed to work dramatically since Team Mr. is often cited as one of the best shiny hunting teams in PokeMMO and was the first team to complete their entire shiny Pokedex within PokeMMO in 2025. An achievement that for a very long time was legitimately considered impossible and took any team 12 years to get within PokeMMO. Now, numbers change in PokeMMO constantly since they are always updating and adjusting methods, but we calced it at one point about 2 to 3 years ago, and we found out that it would take one player about 360 years of playing PokeMMO 16 hours a day to ever achieve the full shiny Pokedex. That is almost 4 generations of passing down PokeMMO to your bloodline and to your kids just to achieve an in-game goal. So one person doing it was always out of the question, but what if a team could do it? No one had ever really attempted it. And what was that final Pokemon Team Mr. needed to complete their Pokedex, you might ask? Maybe something like a Charizard or a Metagross, a Porygon, a really desired, cool, rare Pokemon. No, it was a Pansage, you know, the little grass monkey. Yeah, he is shockingly rare and nobody really wants to hunt him, understandably. But I think it's safe to say that the creation of Shiny War was one of the many things that pushed Team Mr. into that rank 1 spot, as well as helped them be the first team to get their shiny Pokedex. A feat that has now, about 1 year later, been achieved by one other team, and I want to give them a massive congratulations over to Team Uxie. They have also completed their shiny Pokedex and are the second team to ever do so within PokeMMO history. But back to Shiny War, a communal team event that was held about 2 to 3 times a year by Team Mr. to motivate and encourage their players. But never in a million years did any PokeMMO player expect them to officially adapt it as an in-game event in 2024. Largely thanks to staff member Park and all of the other staff members that really pushed this initiative to the developers and had to work on finalizing all of the rules and planning everything. The first ever PokeMMO Shiny War really fell on the PokeMMO staff much more than the developers, as they weren't sure if it would really work and if players would be interested. They even commissioned artwork from popular PokeMMO players and threw together this amazing ragtag event. This blew everyone's minds. Nobody expected anything like this. We had only ever seen holiday events within PokeMMO, never a community adapted event to this scale as well. You see, PokeMMO Shiny War is all about getting as many shinies as possible, yes, but also the rarer the better. Quality does matter here, and shinies are broken down into tiers, which depend on their species, which usually depend on how long it takes to hunt them and their availability in the wild. For example, something like a Charizard is tier 0 and worth about 30 points, while something like a Bidoof is very common and only worth about 2 points at tier 6. One of these shinies takes about 30 hours to hunt, while the other takes about 600 to 800. And then of course you have things like shiny alpha Pokemon or Shalpha Pokemon being worth 50 points and legendaries and mythicals being worth 100 points, since the idea of seeing those is so astronomical. And then in the second Shiny War, we also saw bonuses for secret shinies and safari caught shinies, thankfully. Alright, so they figured out scoring, which I'm sure took a lot longer than just explaining it to you guys today. I can't imagine all of the math and background research for something like this. Keeping Shiny War balanced is incredibly disgustingly important. Next up, they had to figure out how to structure the participants. For the first Shiny War, they ended up doing 55 teams of 30 players each. I'm not good at math, but that's about 1,650 players able to participate in the first Shiny War. Players and teams would simply sign up on the forums, and it was a first-come, first-served basis. There was no benefits to already having shinies or being a good shunter in the game. Anybody could sign up and try to make a name for themselves. And right about here is where we see one of the first big mistakes of the first Shiny War, which is expected with a new piece of content. The first Shiny War was 2 months long. A mistake that people realized about 1 week into the event. But once again, with new ideas, you will always need to have refinement. This was the first time we were ever doing something like this in PokeMMO. Mistakes were bound to happen. And thankfully, the second official PokeMMO Shiny War brought many upgrades and rule changes, alongside an extremely controversial update right before the event dropped, but we aren't going to cover that fiasco today for the sake of brevity. There are videos on my channel covering that drama if you're interested. Some of the most important changes included making the event about 1 month long, which was really crucial. That was plenty of time to alienate all of the RNG out of the event. That's why the first one was so long. They wanted it to be a very skill-based event, when inherently shiny hunting has a lot of RNG. But the longer an event is, and the more efficiently someone can hunt over a long period of time, the more you can kind of outshine the RNG, and the better the players will get more shinies over a long period of time more consistently. Now, I know when I say the word skill when it comes to shiny hunting, a lot of people instinctively get up in arms and very upset. I'm not saying shiny hunting has the same mechanical skills as something like League of Legends or Overwatch, but shiny hunting is more of an endurance thing. Think of it as like sprinting versus running a marathon. You would never tell a cross-country runner or a marathon runner that they actually have no skill for what they're doing. It's just a different kind of skill. It's all about endurance and long-term pacing. So whenever I say the word skill, I hope that people can understand that I'm not always talking about mechanical skill, although that can pop up more than people realize. There is a massive difference between someone shiny hunting at 100% efficiency for the entire event versus 80%. We calced that at one point, and we found that someone who was hunting at 100% efficiency versus 80%, the person at 100% will get 6 more shinies over the course of one shiny war, which is absolutely massive on average, of course. But RNG will always play a role, and that is the truth of shiny hunting. I'm not going to ever deny that. I think of shiny hunting as similar to marathons, as similar to trading card games. As an avid Magic the Gathering player, I understand that there is a lot of RNG inherently in games like this. You're always shuffling your deck, you're always risking those shiny odds, but over long periods of time, consistency and RNG do even out, which is why in Magic the Gathering, every single minute decision that you have access to really matters and impacts the game. When you have less control over the overall outcome, it actually makes every single little click and decision that you make have that much more weight, because you can only control the things that you can control, which makes those things that much more important that you do control them. But I could do a whole video rambling about that. Let's just get back to the second official Shiny War. They also raised the team cap from 55 teams up to 150 teams, meaning that now a whopping 4,500 PokeMMO players could now compete in the official Shiny War. There was also 3 absolutely crucial clauses being added, one of which being the egg hatch clause, which essentially meant that any Pokemon that was hatched as an egg, even if it's not a tier 0 species or whatever, so let's say you were egging Bellsprout for whatever reason, would still be worth 20 points. And I quite like this since egg hatches are very special. You also have the unique species clause, which would reward players for diversifying their shiny hunts and not just finding the most optimal shiny hunt in the whole game for points and then sticking there for the entire event, like the dark days of Cryogonal Wars in the first Shiny War. Be careful who you say Cryogonal around within PokeMMO, it may cause flashbacks. There was also the new duplicate penalty, which punished individual players further from getting the same shiny over and over again. One was focused on balancing things for the whole team, and then duplicate penalty was more about punishing the individual for grinding the same spot over and over. I think these 2 different penalties really worked well together in tandem, since one of them just rewarded the player for catching different Pokemon and the other punished, as opposed to just having one or the other. I feel like this actually worked out really well in my opinion. It was very smart to do both of them. Another absolutely massive change is that instead of just giving the top 3 teams in the whole world a really cool specific vanity like the Charcoal Dragon Wings, first place would get the Sparkling Charcoal Dragon Wings, and then second and third would get the non-sparkling Charcoal Dragon Wings. They also added so that all top 50 teams would receive the Charcoal Dragon Horns. This was a massive deal, so the event didn't feel as soul-crushing if you weren't in the top 3 in the whole world. And then arguably the best addition of all of Shiny War number 2 was the official live leaderboard. We had never seen something like this in PokeMMO, and it also meant the devs were getting involved in putting time and resources into this. Shiny War was becoming a much more serious and much more legitimate thing than people realized. You could compare your team's stores to others in live time, and this was crucial to keeping things honest, fair, and even more competitive. In the first war, it was commonplace for teams to lie about their store to make the other teams feel a sense of ease and lure them into getting lazy on their shiny hunts. And in all fairness, why wouldn't you? In a hyper-competitive setting, there is no advantage for you to just give away information like that. The first ever shiny war in PokeMMO was won by Team ETG, with Spheal Team 6 right on their trail in a very close fight down to the wire, and nobody had known which team won until a few days after when they calculated the points. It was a true nail-biter, and both teams just cemented themselves as legends, but ETG taking that first place in the first ever war is just something of mythology. Not to discredit the third place team, Aloe, which I don't really know a whole lot about, unfortunately, but being up there on that first leaderboard in the first ever war is once again nothing short of legendary. These teams cemented themselves forever within PokeMMO history. A fun stat to look at as well is in the first shiny war, there was a total of 5,140 shinies caught across every single team and players. And the second war, we almost doubled it to 9,597, although there were, of course, a lot more players that year. And then the second official PokeMMO Shiny War, Spheal Team 6 returned as Spheal Team 7 and got their revenge and became the best shiny hunters in the world for the time and achieved peak PokeMMO glory, with, of course, the legendary Essence being named MVP. But glory does not come without a cost, as many of these players entered hundreds of millions of PokeMMO debt that would take a lot of time to pay off and rebuild. But I think if you asked any of them, they would have said it was unbelievably well worth it. Alright, but enough about PokeMMO Shiny War history. Let's talk about the third official PokeMMO Shiny War, which at the time of making this doesn't actually exist. It has not been announced, but do not fret, that is normal for the PokeMMO developers. It is currently June 5th as I'm recording this, and the previous Shiny Wars were announced on June 18th. You can see over here in the top left. And then the first one was July 8th, but that was once again when they were testing things. I think this is a much more likely date this year. But I want to be honest and say that we don't know for sure. I think with only 2 years of history, it's not enough to say that we'll be seeing an annual PokeMMO official Shiny War every single year. I hope that we do. I've been planning around it for months now on my Iron Man accounts, but we'll have to just roll the dice and see. And I'm hopeful that we will see one this year, since the last two events have seemed to be a massive, massive success. But let's go ahead and jump into what a lot of you guys are probably here for, and hopefully the timestamps allowed you to skip around to what you want to see. First things first, when is Shiny War? We kind of already covered it, but it will most likely be in mid-July, with signups being announced in mid-June-ish. Once again, that is just a guesstimate, but I feel decently confident. I'd say about 80% confident on that guesstimate. Next up, a hard-hitting question. Is it too late to prepare for Shiny Wars in 2026? It depends on your goals. If you want to compete for top 3 in the world, it is probably too late. I'm going to be honest with you. There are players that you've been working for the past 1 year in full to prepare for this event. If you want to compete for top 50 and go for the horns or potentially another new vanity this year, I think it is absolutely still possible if you are a decently developed PokeMMO player with about 10 million plus Pokeyen and a lot of time on your hands alongside the work ethic to stare at your screen for 10 hours a day. Last year, to get top 50 in the world, you needed all 30 members of your team to play around a guesstimated 6+ hours a day from what I've been able to pull and find. It wouldn't surprise me if this year that number jumps dramatically up to 8 to 10+ hours a day due to the rising competition, better knowledge and awareness, and the more desire for those prizes. Last year, we didn't even know that we would be getting a top 50 prize until after signups were already complete. This year, people will know ahead of time, and there is a decent chance that we see the return of different rewards for non-top 3 placements. Hopefully, we'll see something for like top 25 this year, but the competition will be much more fierce, and I suspect that it will only get harder and harder to place highly in Shiny Wars every year from this point forward. I've seen this before with a different game. You see, I used to do something called RuneScape Fantasy EHP, which is a very similar thing to Shiny Wars, but with skilling in old school RuneScape. And once we reached a point of players putting in 140 hours in 1 week, like I did at my very peak, we realized things might have gone too far and started taking longer breaks between our tournaments. Aiming to be the best at anything can be dangerous, but that is the true cost of glory, and I don't want to sugarcoat that. Not everybody's going to understand why people sacrifice so much just to achieve a silly little achievement to them on something like PokeMMO or old school RuneScape. But my message to you is that they don't need to understand, and you don't need to understand. If it's something that you feel a desire and a draw towards, I would just go ahead and try to achieve it while trying to stay as safe as possible, but in reality, you're going to have to take some sacrifices. But that is only going to matter if you truly want to be the best. If you're just going for top 50 or trying to have some fun, you don't have to worry about all of this nonsense. To be totally honest with you, Shiny War as an event is not for the average player within PokeMMO. The same way the Super Bowl isn't for the average football player. If you tried to just walk off the street and head into the Super Bowl, you would get absolutely broken in half by a linebacker like Ray Lewis. It is a tournament for the best of the best, and it only happens once a year. But even if you aren't participating in Shiny War, the event still affects every single player in the game, and it drastically affects the economy, which, here's the fun part, can be taken advantage of as a newer PokeMMO player or even medium level player looking to make some good cash. PokeMMO Shiny War might be the #1 stimulator of the entire economy, and it's also one of the greatest transfers of wealth between high-end rich players down to beginner and newer level players. It's a win-win. The high-end players have been saving all year for this moment, and they want a chance at that glory. And the new players who are trying to make a name for themselves and want to build up their own account and capital have a chance to build some connections with high-end players by consistently supplying them with resources for war. You can effectively become the war dogs of PokeMMO, minus most of the moral ambiguities. If you want to make fat stacks of cash and make a name for yourself as a new or medium player within PokeMMO, these are the crucial resources you want to start farming up, collecting, and selling consistently during war and even before war. Number 1, Dittos. Number 2, Leppas. Number 3, Ninkadas. Number 4, other breeders, rare Pokemon species, or even boxes of male breeders like male Magikarps, for example. And number 5, fossils. Tons and tons of fossils. Now, there are other things on this list, but I will leave that for you guys to explore and figure out. But these are the big 5. If you think I'm forgetting something or want to give other ideas, feel free to leave comments explaining what you might be farming or looking to farm during Shiny War. Also, keep in mind that there is also a 10% wild boost that usually occurs during these events. So even if you aren't competing in Shiny War, you can still casually have some fun and just shiny hunt alongside of the event. And I encourage you to do so. You can also pick a team and stick to them and root for them and cheer them on. Whether it's because you have friends on that team, you just like the name, or want to root for the underdog or fan favorite, pick a team and root for them. Be invested in the journey and have a blast. Shiny War is one of the rare opportunities within PokeMMO where you can get into the same team spirit that we see with things like esports or even IRL sports, of course. And it's a beautiful thing to be a part of something and want to work towards and cheer on someone else's success. Or find your own success by farming and grinding the resources for those shiny hunters, or hell, even being one of those legendary shunters for yourself. Maybe you can't be one of those shunters this year. Maybe you're too new to PokeMMO, you didn't prepare, whatever it may be. You can still do it in the future. And that is why I love PokeMMO so damn much, because we are all born in Pallet Town and we are given the most fair shot we'll ever be given here in PokeMMO. But that is all I have to talk about today. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, leave a like on it. If not, go ahead and dislike it and call me stinky in the comments respectfully. If you have any more feedback, let me know in the comments. Of course, if you want to go above and beyond and support the content, allow guides and streams like this to exist, YouTube memberships, Twitch Primes, Twitch subs, and PayPal and Venmo donations really do allow my channel to exist. Fan funding is what allows me to put as much time, energy, and effort into researching and covering topics like this. So I hope it is always worth it to you guys, and I'm just lucky to be here. Have a great day, and good luck to anybody who even looks at Shiny Wars this year. I'm excited to see all the names that I get to learn, whether from shunters or grinders. It's going to be a blast. I will see you guys there, hopefully in about a month and a half or so. Yo, what's up? Outro Patrouski here, and I wanted to say thank you so much to everybody's name who is on this list. You really allow me to make the content that I do every single day, and I hope I can make it worth your guys' while and add to your PokeMMO journey. Thanks again so much for watching the entire video, and have a great day.